My name is Andrew Smith, and I'm here today just to talk to you about some of the basics of the paper 1040 form which you use for filing your individual U.S. federal income taxes. To start off, we're going to talk about filing status. Filing status is used by the taxpayer to determine the standard deduction, eligibility for the earned income credit, and computation of taxes. There are 7 different filing status codes. First being the single taxpayer, then comes married taxpayer filing a joint return. After that is married taxpayer filing a separate return where a dependent is not claimed. Then we have head of household, qualifying widower, married taxpayer filing a separate return where the spouse is claimed as a dependent, and then head of household where a dependent is not claimed. The amount of the standard deduction depends on the year of the return, the taxpayer's filing status, and dependents claimed. A taxpayer and/or spouse who is age 65 or older and/or blind is entitled for a higher standard deduction. The taxpayer checks a box on the 1040 to indicate the reason for the additional standard deduction. Next, we have the name line. The name line is for the first name, middle initial, and last name of the primary and secondary taxpayers, including any suffix. The primary taxpayer name will appear on the first line. The secondary taxpayer's name may appear on the first or second line. Next comes taxpayer identification numbers. The primary TIN, or for taxpayer identification number, belongs to the taxpayer whose name appears first on the return. The primary TIN must be entered in the Your Social Security Number block. The primary TIN is necessary for all returns. The secondary TIN belongs to the spouse. The secondary TIN is necessary for returns with a filing status of married filing jointly or married filing separately. There is also an additional information line. The additional information line consists of extra information that may or may not be present in the name or mailing address lines. This could be the taxpayer's representative, a street address, or another location that is not part of the mailing address. On 1040s, you also have to address the Affordable Care Act. ACA legislation provides individuals with a choice: maintain a minimum essential coverage for themselves and family members, or include an additional payment with their federal income tax return. There's also the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. Congress established the Presidential Election Campaign Fund to support financing of presidential election campaigns. The taxpayer may request that $3 go to this campaign fund by checking one or both boxes on the 1040. The 1040 also addresses dependents. The taxpayers who are claimed as dependents on another taxpayer's return are not allowed to claim themselves. Dependents will indicate on the tax return that they are being claimed as a dependent by someone else. There are 6 dependent positions. The 6 positions are used to identify the different relationships between the dependent and the taxpayer. Taxpayers identify their dependents on the dependent line of the 1040. The provided information is used to determine the taxpayer's filing status and eligibility for child tax credit for each dependent. Each dependent must have a TIN. So, it also, again, goes over mailing addresses. And then there is the area for the signature and for if you use a tax preparer. The signature is required below the jurat, which is a perjury statement, in the sign here area of the return. The jurat is the statement that begins, under penalty of perjury, I declare. If a return is prepared by someone other than the taxpayer, the prepared data appears below the signature area. So then we'll move on to the actual Form 1040, page 2, lines 1 through 15. So the taxpayer report all sources of income and losses on lines 1 through 7. Starting from the adjusted gross income, the taxpayer subtracts either a standard or itemized deduction amount to obtain the taxable income. Based on the amount, the income tax is calculated. They may use other means of calculating their tax, such as the alternative minimum tax. The tax amount may be reduced by tax credits or increased from other taxes. Wages are reported on line 1. Interest, both tax-exempt and taxable interest, are reported on line 2. Qualified and ordinary dividends are reported on line 3. IRAs, pensions, and annuities on line 4. Social Security benefits are reported on line 5. The totals of lines 1 through 5 is reported on line 6. The standard deduction is reported on line 7. On the left side from the form, the amount of the standard deduction is provided. Line 9 is used for reporting qualified business income deductions. Line 10 is the total of all taxable income. Line 11 is the tax before credits located in the tax table. Line 12 is the child tax credit. Line 13 is a calculation to subtract the child tax credit from the tax. Line 14 is used for reporting other or special taxes, and line 15 is then your total tax. Then there is an area for payments. The taxpayer uses line 16 to report payments made to the IRS during the tax year. Refundable credits are then reported on line 17, and line 18 is the total payments. Line 17 and 18 cover refundable credits and total payments. Line 17A is used to claim the earned income credit. Line 17B is used to claim the additional child tax credit on Schedule 8812. Line 17C is used to claim an education credit on Form 8863. Refunds and the amount you owe are shown on lines 19 through 23. Line 19 through 23 are used to enter any overpayment or underpayment of tax resulting from the difference between the total tax due and the total payments. The taxpayer can request an overpayment be refunded in full, in part, or not at all. Part or all of the overpayment may be applied to the next year's tax. An entry on line 28 indicates the taxpayer is due a refund. The taxpayer's direct deposit information is then listed on lines 20B, 20C, and 20D. An entry on line 21 indicates that the taxpayer wants all or part of the refund to be applied to the next year's taxes. The taxpayer can choose to split an overpayment between a refund and a credit towards the next year. An entry on line 22 would indicate that the taxpayer has a balance due. Line 23 is calculated when the taxpayer owes estimated tax penalties. The taxpayer may also request a waiver of penalties by attaching a Form 2210, Form 2210F, or an explanation. Overall, those are the bare minimum basics of this 1040 form for the 2018 tax year. Ideally, you'll never have to see a paper tax return, but if you needed to, this is some general information.